against the elite within 2 years. Now, folks, anything that is going to be done by an honest, patriot American must be done immediately. And if you don't do it immediately, you will not have the wherewithal, the money, the finances, the ability to be able to do it within 2 years. They feel that they have it made so much. And this was his statement. Again, you must take action immediately. He let me know that there's no way in this world that you're going to be able to do anything unless you do it immediately. And now understand that, well, I'll tell you more about this man in a few moments. The total devaluation and destruction of the dollar will gradually take place over 2 years. Now, he had told me 2 years ago that it was going to take place within a year to a year and a half, the complete collapse of the American dollar. They have altered their timeline because of who the president was elected, and I'll tell you more about that. I mean, this is interesting, why a certain president was elected. You've got to hear this part on down in the DVD, so don't turn it off yet. And he said the gradual deterioration of the dollar will take place over approximately 2 years. Inflation, he said, inflation likewise will escalate over a period of 2 years, and it will be so gradual that it'll be like the frog boiling in the pot. You won't realize what's happened to you until you're paying double and triple for everything at the grocery store and at the hardware store.
Now, this is really important because I know that there's some people out there that are predicting a stock market crash. In other words, actually falling off the cliff, a real immediate downslide, a downturn in their economy. But you're saying, he said, gradual.
Gradually. Over a period of 2 years. And they have their timeline already set. It will fall off the cliff, believe me. But they know when it's going to fall off the cliff, and the average person does not. Oil prices, let me encourage you on this. He said oil prices will stay between $50 and $70 a barrel. Now, this is drastic for OPEC. And I'll tell you more about that as we go along. $50 to $7 a barrel. So that means you're going to continue paying for approximately the next 2 years what you're paying at the gas pump right now. Then, oh my goodness, listen to this one carefully. Gold and silver are the only things you can rely on. Why? I asked him this. I said, why? He said, that's our money. Have you ever thought about gold and silver and why the elite use that? They don't use paper. Paper is worthless to them. 2012 and the elite and the Mayan calendar have something in common. You're going to hear about that in my DVD number 3. And here is the part that startled me more about anything that he said, anything else. He said war is planned after 2 years. And he told me where it's going to be, what their plans are, and how they're going to do it.
Wow. Wow. You must have been startled to have this conversation.
I'm still
stunned.
I'm still stunned.
Yes.
It was days before I was normal again after talking with this man. And he continued talking for the longest. We went on and on and on the telephone. He was in no hurry.
Well, I remember you called me right after you talked to him, and you were still shaking. You were still stunned when you called me.
And I am still. And I felt it a necessity. I flew all the way here, halfway across America, to do these 3 DVDs in your studio because I felt that the American people must get this information out. I plead with the Americans, every one of you out there viewing this DVD, I beg of you, this DVD is not copywritten. I ask you, I beg of you, I plead with you to copy this DVD. Get it out to 1,000 people. Get 1 million of these in their hands. And if you doubt what I'm saying, just stick around 2 years.
Yeah.
And you'll find out.
The proof is in the pudding. And, you know, the things that he told you before, who could have projected that the barrel of oil was going to go from $147 down to $34?
They couldn't.
And it happened in 4 months.
Yes.
I mean, that's a cliff. No one could have known that.
The entire world
unless they knew. Unless they really
But
knew.
he did.
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm not a prophet. And let me tell you up front, I'm just merely a minister of the gospel who was in the right place at the right time.
Met the right
By the
person.
providence of God. I give God all the credit.
Amen.
The providence of God. Well, you say, how do you know these things? Okay, here goes. After graduating from college, I went to Florida and pastored a church for 12 years, Grace Baptist Church. God said to me one day, I want you to go to Alaska as a missionary. That was 1970. I arrived in Alaska. That was just at the time that they announced they were going to build the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. The largest pipe ever constructed on the face of the earth for the carrying of crude oil. The biggest project ever undertaken by private enterprise in the history of the world. And they said that 35,000 pipeliners were going to converge on the state of Alaska to build that 800-mile, 4-foot diameter pipe. And the first thing that came to my mind as a missionary just arriving on the mission field, 35,000 of the roughest, toughest, cussingest, drinkingest, orneringest folks on the face of this earth. I said, they must need some spiritual guidance.
Amen.
So they did too. That was the understatement of the year. And I went to Alaska Pipeline Service Company and I said, don't you need a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline? He laughed at me. He said, we never had a chaplain on any pipeline in the world. We wouldn't know what to do with you. Well, I kept going back and back and back. I guess persistence paid off, and finally they said, okay, we'll give you the northern 7 work camps, which was Prudhoe Bay, the big oil field, Arctic Ocean, all the way down to Galbraith Lake and the Brooks Mountains. And he said, just go up there and see what you can do. I'm sure they thought I'd last about a week and come home amongst those men, but I didn't. 6 months later, I was still at it. And one day, Mr. R.H. King, personnel relations man with Alaska, called me on the phone, and he said, Chaplain, you're saving us thousands of dollars of counseling fees we aren't having to pay. He said, your religious denomination pays your salary. And he said, we've decided that you're a great help to us. We would like to offer you, if you will accept it, executive status.
Wow.
And I said, well, what does that mean? I've never been an executive on anybody's board but the Lord's. And he said, it merely means that you can go any place you'd like, see anything you want to see. And he said, we would like to invite you, when you're at Prudhoe Bay, and we're having a board meeting, we'd like to invite you to sit in on our board meetings in an advisory capacity.
Wow.
In order to help the relationship between management and labor. He said, you can't vote, but you can sit there, and I got to listen.
You didn't even know what was just happening to you. Some of the biggest things in the world for people to understand goes on in those board meetings, and you get to listen.
A little insignificant, unknown aviation missionary out in the bush of Alaska, sitting with the elite, the ruling elite of the world for 3 years' time.
Wow.
There's no way in the world this could happen except the providence of God. He wanted me there so I can tell you this story today.
And also to make the men more comfortable, you told me too.
Well, yes. And so,
And to solve problems.
for 3 years' time, I sat across the dinner table from them like you're doing. You'd never meet these people. You can't get to know them. They don't allow themselves in the public to know people that much. And I sat with them, lived in the dorms with them, was invited to stay in executive dorms, heard what the elite had to say. I'll never forget one day, I'd been with these people all day long. That morning I'd hosted some person on the pipeline, and later I think some congressman had come up with something, and then that afternoon sitting with another group of them and so on, and I was devastated. You see, I was brought up in a Christian home. I had a godly, wonderful, godly mother and dad, and a grandmother who won me to the Lord at 11 years of age. And all of a sudden, I'm thrown into the midst of the ruling elite of the world, a den of thieves, so to speak. And I remember that night, I was just devastated. I went back to my dorm room. I laid down on my bed,